What would you do if someone looked you in the eye and told you that you don't belong here? Would you walk away? Would you fight back? Or would you speak the kind of truth that silences a room? This is the story of one man who did just that. In the middle of a busy grocery store, amid aisles of fruit and fluorescent lights, a hateful comment shattered the air. But what came next? It wasn't rage. It wasn't violence. It was something far more powerful. A response so calm, so honest. It didn't just quiet the hate, it changed everything. This is not just a story about racism. It's a story about courage, growth, and the unexpected power of choosing words over war. And once you hear it, you might never stay silent again. White Mark Supercenter in Columbus, Ohio buzzed with the usual Saturday crowd. Bright fluorescent lights cast a sterile glow over the spotless aisles as carts rattled with frozen meat, fresh greens, and bargain toilet paper. Near the produce section, Malik Carter, a tall black man in his 30s, quietly picked out oranges. Dressed in a navy hoodie, earbuds tucked away, his mind was still processing a tough week at the city's youth center where he worked. A few feet away stood Barbara Whitmore, a white woman in her 70s. Her stiff tweed outfit clashed with the casual crowd. Her silver hair was meticulously curled, and her aged leather purse had her name stitched in cursive. She looked like any grandmother, until she opened her mouth. No one knew that within minutes, a single sentence from her lips would bring the entire store to a standstill. A sentence that would force everyone nearby to confront something they usually ignored, the ugly truth hiding in plain sight. Barbara gripped the handle of her cart like the world might tip over. Her eyes flicked toward Malik, just a second too long. She muttered something under her breath, too low to be sure. Then her voice grew louder, sharp enough to slice through casual chatter. This used to be a decent neighborhood. It wasn't directed at anyone in particular, but the timing made it clear who she meant. Malik heard it. He had heard variations his entire life, from teachers who expected less, from cashiers who watched him too closely, from neighbors who crossed the street when he approached. But Barbara didn't stop. Some people come here and act like they own the place. A young woman with a cart looked over, then away. A teenage employee who was stacking apples froze in place. Then Barbara locked eyes with Malik and added the line that would change everything. "Why don't you go back to Africa?" The air went dead. Barbara's words hit like a slap, sharp and loud. Shoppers nearby paused mid-step. A kid tugged his mom's sleeve, whispering, "What's happening?" She shushed him quickly. Malik didn't flinch. Not yet, but the weight in the air was thick, like the moment just before a storm breaks. Barbara sat with an expression that mixed righteousness and disgust. Her words had cut deep, but she acted like she'd spoken plain facts. Malik stood still, orange in hand, eyes fixed on her. A security guard near the exit shifted his weight, unsure whether to step in or stay out. The tension reached a breaking point, but Malik didn't move. He simply looked at her with the kind of calm that can shatter walls. Finally, Malik broke the silence. "Do you even hear what you just said?" His voice wasn't angry. It was calm, deep, controlled. That somehow made it land even harder. Barbara scoffed. "I don't owe you an explanation." Malik stepped closer, not threatening, but unignorable. "You said I don't belong here, like you get to decide that." People stopped pretending not to watch. The couple near the bakery froze. So did the guy by the milk cooler. Even the soft rock playing from the ceiling seemed to lower in volume. "So go ahead, explain it. Tell them why you think you have the right to say that." Barbara stared back, blinking faster now. But for the first time, she looked unsure. Malik took a deep breath. "I was born here, raised here. My grandfather was born in Georgia. Before that, his father was a slave, shipped here in chains, beaten, and sold like cattle. Not by choice." He let that sink in. "My father served in Vietnam, came home and couldn't even get served at a diner. My mother taught third grade for 25 years. Raised me to be calm when the world's loud." Barbara opened her mouth. Malik raised a finger, not to silence her, but to finish. "We didn't ask to come here, but we built this place, brick by brick, law by law. Black hands helped build the America you take for granted." A woman near the meat section nodded slowly. The room hadn't made a sound. So when you say go back to Africa, maybe you should look at who really belongs here. Barbara hesitated. For a second, her face twisted with something Malik couldn't quite read. Doubt, fear, shame. A store clerk crept closer. Is everything okay here? He asked nervously. No one answered. Malik turned not to Barbara, but to the people watching. This isn't just about me. It's about every time you heard this kind of talk and stayed quiet. A middle-aged man leaned on his cart, eyes suddenly thoughtful. Barbara shook her head. The world's changed too fast. That's all I meant. No, Malik replied, his tone soft but piercing. You mean the world doesn't belong to just you anymore. And that scares you. An elderly man with a cane stepped forward. I fought in Korea. I bled under that flag. I served beside black soldiers who saved my life. If Malik doesn't belong, then neither do I. His voice cracked but stayed steady. The dam broke. A nurse said, My son's best friend is black. He's part of our family. A teenage girl in a school hoodie whispered to her friend, She really said that? Out loud? Barbara's lips parted, but no words came. Malik didn't gloat. He just nodded at the veteran, eyes filled with quiet gratitude. No fist pumping, no shouting, just truth spoken aloud, and finally heard. Malik picked up 2 oranges and turned to leave. A woman placed a hand on his arm. Thank you, she said simply. A young boy beamed at him from behind a cart, whispering to his mother, He's cool. The security guard nodded as Malik passed, murmuring, Appreciate you, man. Malik didn't smile big. He didn't bask in applause. He just walked. His message wasn't about winning an argument. It was about refusing to stay silent. Barbara remained frozen. No one told her to leave. No one yelled. But something in the atmosphere shifted. Eyes now looked at her differently. She stood up stiffly, pushing her cart with tight lips. No one blocked her. No one helped. This wasn't exile. This was exposure. Her power hadn't been taken. It had been weighed, examined, and dismissed. Outside, the sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. Malik stepped out, the oranges still in hand. No fanfare, no cameras. But something had changed inside. A girl called her mother to retell what she'd witnessed. A manager scribbled something in his notes. A grocery store had become a place where truth finally echoed. Malik looked back at the automatic doors, not with anger, but with clarity. Today, he thought, we cracked something open. And maybe next time, someone else will speak up too. As the sliding doors closed behind Malik, the store remained in a strange hush. The moment hadn't just passed, it lingered. Like the smell of citrus on your hands after peeling an orange, what had been said still clung to the air. In aisle 5, a father who had watched the confrontation with his young daughter now found himself kneeling down beside her. You okay, sweetie? She nodded but asked softly, Why was that lady so angry at him? The man hesitated. He'd never had this conversation with her before. He always thought there would be time. But Malik had made it clear. These moments don't come scheduled. Sometimes, he said carefully, people say mean things because they don't understand others. And sometimes it's up to us to say something back. His daughter looked down, then said, Like he did? Exactly like that. 2 aisles over, an elderly Vietnamese woman whispered to her husband in their native tongue. He reminded me of when we arrived here, when people stared at us like we didn't belong. Malik had left the building, but the truth he dropped had spread through it like a spark on dry leaves. From the second-floor office, Teresa Boone, the White Mark Supercenter manager, had seen it all unfold on the store's security monitors. She'd worked in retail management for nearly 20 years. She'd seen fights over expired coupons, shoplifters hiding candy in strollers, and even couples break up in front of freezer doors. But nothing like this. She replayed the footage. Watched Barbara's mouth move, her body language, her cold posture. Then Malik, steady, upright, unshaken, delivering not just words but an education. He had done more in 3 minutes than half a dozen corporate DEI trainings. Teresa leaned back in her chair and stared at the screen. Her eyes weren't just on Malik. They were on the bystanders. The cashier who paused, the clerk who froze, the woman with her child who looked down. No one intervened. She clicked her radio. Cam, get the floor team in the break room. We're having a meeting. Now. When she walked down, the employees were already there, whispering. "I'm not asking for opinions," Teresa said. "I'm telling you that from today on, no one in this store, customer or not, gets to degrade another human being. If that makes someone uncomfortable, they can shop somewhere else." No one argued, because they had seen the truth too. Barbara's hands gripped the steering wheel as if it were her only lifeline. Her knuckles pale, jaw tight, she didn't turn on the radio. She didn't call her daughter. She didn't even cry. She just drove. The streets blurred past, but the words repeated, over and over, like echoes in her mind. "My grandfather fought for this country. My father came back from war and couldn't even get served in a diner. You think you belong more than me?" Each one chipped at something inside her, a wall she hadn't known she'd built. Barbara had grown up in a world where people didn't say such things out loud, where prejudice was polite and private. She never considered herself racist. She donated to charities, watched documentaries, even posted a Martin Luther King Jr. quote on her Facebook last year. But what she'd said today, it wasn't something she could rationalize, not even to herself. As she turned into her driveway, something in her chest tightened. Her late husband's picture still hung by the door. He had served in the Navy, fought beside black men. She remembered one named Roy who used to send Christmas cards. How would he have looked at her today? Would he still have called her friend? Malik didn't tell anyone about what happened. Not at first. When he walked into his apartment, he placed the oranges gently in the bowl, like nothing was different. The quiet of his home wrapped around him like a familiar coat. No applause, no news cameras. Just the low hum of his refrigerator and the creak in the floorboard near the kitchen table. He sat down and opened a notebook, worn with pages full of names, quotes, and notes from the youth center where he mentored teens. On a fresh page, he wrote, "Today, someone tried to erase me with 9 words. I responded with 400 years of truth." Then he closed the notebook and rested his head in his hands. What people didn't understand was how exhausting it was to be calm, to respond with dignity when everything inside you wanted to shout. He'd done what he believed in, but the weight of it settled into his bones. Malik didn't regret it, but it reminded him that being the bigger person often came at a cost. And not everyone saw the toll it took. But maybe, just maybe, some of them had heard him, and that was enough. 16-year-old Jaden, one of Malik's mentees, scrolled through TikTok later that night when he stumbled upon a video. He paused. It was Malik, standing in the produce section, speaking with that same calm, steel voice Jaden had heard a dozen times at the center. Except this time, it wasn't just him listening. It was millions. The video was short but powerful. Just a clip of Malik saying, "The problem isn't that I don't belong here. The problem is you don't know how to share space that was never just yours to begin with." Jaden didn't hit like. He didn't comment. He just watched it again and again. At school, he'd been called names, laughed at when he tried to answer questions in class. A teacher once asked if he cheated because his essay was too articulate. Jaden looked at the screen and whispered, "He said everything I wanted to say." Then he opened his group chat. "Y'all watch this. This man speaks truth." By morning, 10 more kids had seen the video. By the end of the day, it was on every screen in the school cafeteria. Malik hadn't gone viral by choice, but he had lit a match. In a sunlit corner of the city's community library, a small group gathered around a table. Teresa Boone, 2 store supervisors, and Malik. Teresa had reached out through the youth center's contact form. She wasn't sure Malik would come, but he had. He arrived 10 minutes early and quietly took a seat. "I don't want a PR stunt," Malik said without preamble. "If that's what this is, I'm leaving." Teresa raised her hands. "This isn't for PR. This is for policy." She slid a thin folder across the table. Inside were drafts of a new staff training program and a statement to be placed at the entrance of every Whitemark branch in the region. "We're calling it the Carter Standard," she said. "Not officially, of course, but between us, it's named after you." Malik opened the folder and scanned the text. Words like respect, dignity, zero tolerance for hate, and immediate intervention training stood out. He didn't smile, but he nodded. "Put action behind the word," he said. "That's what matters." Teresa leaned forward. "Would you help us train the staff?" Malik's eyes softened slightly. You're serious? She nodded. Dead serious. Then let's do it right, he replied. Barbara sat in her kitchen the following evening, holding a letter she had rewritten 5 times. She didn't know if she'd send it, but she wrote it anyway. Dear Mr. Carter, I was the woman who told you to go back to Africa. I hate reading that line. I hate knowing I said it. I hate that I once believed it, even for a moment. Her pen paused. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I've been thinking about my grandchildren, about the stories I used to believe, and about the way you stood there without flinching. I used to think strength was loud, but you showed me it can be quiet, calm, and more powerful than shame. Barbara signed her name simply, Barbara Whitmore. She folded the letter neatly and placed it in an envelope. Then she walked to her front porch and sat, watching the sun set over her manicured yard. She didn't drop the envelope in the mailbox, not yet, but she kept it on her kitchen table, because part of her was waiting for the courage to do more than just apologize. 3 weeks after the incident, the city council called a public meeting titled Belonging in Columbus. It wasn't just a town hall, it was a reckoning. Malik was asked to speak. He almost declined. But when a dozen high school students from the youth center showed up wearing shirts that read, I belong here, he said yes. As he took the microphone, Malik scanned the faces. Teachers, shop owners, teenagers, veterans, and somewhere near the back, Barbara Whitmore. She didn't hide. She looked him in the eye. I'm not here to go viral, Malik began. I'm here because I've spent years teaching young people how to speak with purpose. And I was tested in front of all of you. He paused, voice steady. If you think racism only looks like violence or slurs, you're not listening. Sometimes it's in the silence, in the side eyes, in the way you don't speak up. I'm not the hero of this story. I just spoke when I was supposed to. But the real question is, what will you say the next time it's your turn? The room erupted in applause, not the kind that ends in seconds, but the kind that meant they'd heard him. Barbara didn't sleep much that night. She thought of her letter, of Malik's words, of the students in the audience who had stared back at her with both suspicion and hope. The next morning she did something unthinkable. She drove to the youth center. She didn't go inside. Not at first. She parked across the street and just watched. Kids laughing, volunteers organizing snacks, a staff member drawing murals with sidewalk chalk. Then she saw Malik. He was helping a boy lift a heavy box of sports gear. Barbara waited until the boy walked away, then stepped out of her car. Malik turned when she approached. His face didn't harden, but it didn't soften either. I came to give you this, she said, offering the letter. He took it but didn't open it. Also, to ask if I could volunteer here. That caught him off guard. Why? He asked. Barbara swallowed hard. Because I want my grandchildren to grow up in a world where I'm not part of the problem anymore. Malik studied her for a long time. Come by Saturday, we paint the back wall then. And then, with quiet resolve, he walked away. Barbara exhaled. It wasn't forgiveness, it was a beginning. At the end-of-year showcase for the youth center, students presented speeches, poems, and art to a packed auditorium. One name stood out on the program. Jaden Rivers, spoken word. Performance, stand up. Malik stood near the side of the stage, arms crossed, proud but nervous. Jaden stepped up, slightly trembling. Then he began, I used to think my silence kept me safe, that staying quiet made me invisible. But the world doesn't need invisible boys. It needs voices. It needs truth. He locked eyes with Malik for one moment, then continued. Mr. Carter showed me that strength isn't just fists or flame. Sometimes it's just standing still, looking hate in the face, and not letting it shrink you. The crowd rose before he even finished. Malik blinked away tears. Barbara, sitting 2 rows from the back, stood too. It was the first time in her life she gave a standing ovation to a black teenager, and it wouldn't be the last. A month after the incident, Teresa Boone received an unexpected call from Whitemark's corporate headquarters. We've been reviewing what you did, the executive on the other end said. The internal training manual you submitted, the Carter Standard, we want to adopt it company-wide. Teresa blinked. All stores? Every location. Within weeks, Malik was flown to the company's training headquarters in Chicago. He walked through glass doors that usually welcomed executives and product designers, but this time, they were welcoming something else, a voice that had cut through hate and come out the other side with clarity. Malik didn't smile for the cameras. He didn't need to. At the podium, he simply said, "This isn't a moment. It's a mirror. Hold it up. Look in it. Every store, every school, every person who wants to do better, you start by seeing the truth." When the applause faded, a black employee from Detroit approached him quietly. "You said what I've been trying to say for 20 years." Malik replied, "Now you don't have to be the only one saying it." Change didn't come through slogans. It came through someone who showed the world how to stand still and still stand strong. Barbara Whitmore's letter sat on Malik's desk for a week before he opened it. When he did, he read it once, then again. Then he folded it, placed it in a protective sleeve, and pinned it on the community board at the youth center under the heading, "When Listening Becomes Learning." Below it, he posted a short handwritten note. "This letter does not erase what was said, but it proves what can come after." The next day, one of the teenagers noticed it and asked, "Why'd you put it up?" Malik answered, "Because change is real, but only when we stop hiding from what we used to be." Barbara returned to volunteer the next Saturday. She didn't wear a name tag, didn't ask to lead any projects. She swept the floor, organized art supplies, and listened, really listened. One girl asked her, "Weren't you the woman from the video?" Barbara paused, then nodded. "I was, but I'm trying to be someone else now." And for the first time in a long time, she meant every word. A year passed. The grocery store looked the same, but it wasn't. The plaque near the entrance read, "Respect grows here," inspired by the events of May 14th, 2025. Some shoppers didn't know what it meant. Others paused, read the article linked by QR code, and walked inside a little more aware. At the youth center, Malik's program had doubled in size. He started a mentorship track for young leaders. Jaden helped run workshops on public speaking and conflict resolution. The boy who once feared his own voice now coached others to find theirs. And Barbara? She never missed a Saturday. She had grown quieter, not out of guilt, but out of reflection. Her voice was no longer sharp with judgment. It had softened into something better, understanding. Sometimes she brought snacks. Other times she just sat beside kids doing homework. She didn't need to be seen. She needed to serve. One afternoon, Malik stopped by the same grocery store, now remodeled and brighter. He grabbed oranges, a box of tea, and a notebook. At checkout, a teenager bagging groceries looked up. "Hey, you're Mr. Carter, right?" Malik smiled. "I am. My mom told me you taught people how to speak without yelling. She said, you made people listen without shouting." Malik chuckled. "Your mom's smart." The boy looked at him, more serious now. "Sometimes, I feel like nobody hears me unless I shout or fight." Malik handed him the receipt and said, "Then that's your power. Use it wisely, but don't confuse volume for value. Truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be clear." The boy nodded, eyes wider. As Malik walked toward the exit, the store's sliding doors opened with a soft whoosh. He didn't know the boy's name, but he knew his voice was in safe hands. On the anniversary of the confrontation, the youth center held a quiet gathering. No speeches, no cameras, just people, friends, students, mentors, a city learning to see itself. Jaden read a poem. Barbara brought lemonade. Teresa brought new program brochures. Malik stood at the back watching. At one point, a little girl tugged on his sleeve. "Are you the man from the story?" He knelt. "What story?" "The one where you made the mean lady think better." Malik smiled. "I didn't make her think. She chose to. I just said what needed to be said." The girl looked confused, then asked, "Why didn't you yell at her?" Malik looked around at the laughter, the new friendships, the quiet understanding in the room. "Because I wanted everyone else to hear." Outside, the sun dipped behind the clouds, and somewhere in the city, another voice began to speak. Another seed was planted. The road between "Go back to Africa" and "I'm trying to be better" had been long, but it had been walked, step by step, word by word, together. Lesson learned from the story. Silence in the face of injustice doesn't keep the peace, it preserves the problem. This story reminds us that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it speaks calmly in the face of hate. Malik's decision to respond with dignity, not aggression, showed that truth, spoken with clarity and compassion, can disarm prejudice more powerfully than shouting ever could. But the deeper lesson lies in what followed. Real change doesn't happen in viral moments. It takes reflection, humility, and action. From Barbara's reluctant transformation to the community's awakening, we see that even those who carry hate can evolve, if they choose to listen. In the end, one man's voice didn't just defend himself, it opened the door for an entire community to grow. And that's the power of speaking up, not just to confront, but to inspire, to educate, and to begin healing what silence has long ignored.